You've all experienced comedy before, whether that came from a meme you found online, similar to this one, a stand-up comedian,
So obviously, I have a disability. I think the technical term for it is being very handsome.
or the epic one-liner that you made to a friend's comment. But where did this form of comedy that is so widespread start? Well, to take a look at who shaped comedy as we know today, we have to go back. Nope, a little more. Even farther. Nope, too far. Ah, there we go. This is the legend we've been looking for, Aristophanes, aka the father of comedy. He is currently acting out one of his most famous plays, titled The Birds. Let's take a listen.
Here, look!
What's the matter?
Why, the crew has been pointing me to something up there for some time now.
And the jay's been opening its beak and cranking its neck to show me I know not what. Clearly there are some birds about here. We shall soon know if we kick up some noise and startle them,
You know what to do? Knock your leg against this rock.
and your head to double the noise. Such a marvelous piece of art. Now what led Aristophanes to create such a masterpiece? Well, it all started around 500 to 460 BCE. We're not completely sure exactly when he was born, because there are mixed accounts. Anyways, he was born into the Pandian clan, which at the time had control over about 11 suburban Athenian city-states. His birthplace is unknown, but his father owned a plot of land on the island of Aegina, which is actually not a part of Athens, but that'll come into play later. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't have much information on why Aristophanes wanted to become a comedian, or why he had passions and motives to start comedy in the first place. This is mostly because pretty much all the information we know about Aristophanes either came from his plays or his depiction in Plato's book, the Symposium. But we do know that Aristophanes started his professional comedy career in 427 BCE with the play The Banqueters, which from what we have fragments of today, we found that this was a satirical play on his contemporaries' educational and moral theories. Not only that, but The Banqueters likely pushed Aristophanes for greatness because it came second in the annual city Dionysia drama competition, which was an event held every March by the Athenians to help commemorate Dionysia, the god of winemaking and festivity. With that close encounter to victory, it's exactly what led Aristophanes to create the masterpiece known as the Babylonians. This play was very controversial because of the way that Aristophanes depicted the events of the Peloponnesian War, and how the leader of Athens, named Cleon, was enslaving the allied to Athenian people. While it may have been controversial with many of the local authorities, the judges and crowd loved it, and the play went on to win first prize. Today, we only have fragments of this play, but what we do have demonstrates Aristophanes' unique style of comedy, which has led to the many styles of comedy we experience today. This play used a lot of political and satirical elements to depict the events that which the viewers have experienced and lived through to lift up the common folk. To enhance the viewer's experience, Aristophanes focused on many elements within his plays, like parodies, songs, sexual jokes, and surreal fantasy, to help illustrate the absurdity of each event and illuminate this kind of hilarious outlook on things. This new style of comedy demonstrated in the Babylonians led to a split crowd. The audience and judges loved it, but Cleon and many other local leaders weren't so fond of the representation of their image, the strategies they used in the war, and how they were portrayed in the play. So in revenge, Cleon took Aristophanes to court for slandering the people of Athens in the presence of foreigners. It also didn't help that Aristophanes technically wasn't born a true Athenian, because that meant that he wasn't fit to be able to talk about these types of things.
Your play was outrageous! I'm the ruler of Athens, and I should be able to run my wars how I want without lowly people like you coming in and ruining my perfect image behind my back.
Come on, loosen up a little bit. This is for the greater good of the people. We've been having a rough time with Sparta that's been taking hundreds of lives from us. I think we need a little bit of cheering up.
Well, I'm not going to let someone like you spread out this type of slander, especially at the event, the city Dionysia drama competition, where plenty of foreigners now look upon down my image because of you.
Well, I'm a comedian, so I'll speak justice no matter how hard it sounds to your ears. Luckily for Aristophanes, though, this lawsuit didn't lead to anything major for him because the jury decided not to punish him. However, Cleon couldn't stand the fact that Aristophanes defended himself so well in court, so in revenge, Cleon had Aristophanes impeached from his local government position. But little did Cleon know, that was only just another move that would only fuel the fire known as Aristophanes' plays. Throughout his career, it's estimated that Aristophanes created a total of over 40 plays. Unfortunately, though, we only have about 13 to 14 of those fully intact today. But let's take a look at the highlight of some of these plays. The first play that I'd like to highlight was performed in 424 BCE, and it was titled Knights. This play really showed how little Aristophanes cared about the attacks that were dished out on his previous play, The Babylonians. This particular play consisted of a violent attack on Cleon, who was perceived as the favorite slave of the stupid and hot-tempered Demos. The story continues until eventually Cleon is outcasted by the influence of the authority of the Agrocrotus. Then Cleon is forced to become a sausage seller, which is meant to depict someone who is even more scoundrelly and impudent than Cleon himself. Not only did Aristophanes like to attack Cleon, but he also even attacked many other rhetoricians as well. In this play titled Clouds, he focused on the view of modern education and morals imparted and taught by these rhetoricians and sophists. The main target of this play was Socrates, with him being confronted by an old rogue Strepsiades, or Twisterton, who wanted to evade many debts. The instructors at Socrates' academy, known as the Prontistery, aka Thinking Spot, taught things like how to make a wrong argument sound right, and that enabled Strepsiades to go on and commit some evil acts. This play eventually ends with the Prontisterion being burned down to the ground. One of his most widely known plays to this day was performed back in 414 BCE, and it is titled Birds. There are two main viewpoints of what Aristophanes' intentions were with this play. On the one hand, you have those who see it merely as a comedy of fantasy, and on the other hand, you have those who see it as a political satire on the imperialistic dreams which would eventually lead to the downfall of Athens. The main character is a man named Pistherius, or Trusty, who is disgusted with his city's bureaucracy. So he goes on to persuade the birds in joining him in building a new town that will be suspended between the heavens and the earth. They would go on to name the town Neclocophilia, or
Cloud Cuckoo Land!
The story goes on to Pistherius and his bird comrades having to defend their utopia from the humans who want to join in. Man, now that I think about it, this scene is very similar to the Lego Movie one, and it's a great depiction of this play. I wonder if there was someone who was on the cast who was inspired by Aristophanes. Anyways, Pistherius eventually goes on to look towards the Olympian gods and asks if they would join him in his battle. Finally, the last play I'd like to mention is the last play that Aristophanes would play in, which is titled Wealth, and he performed it back in 388 BCE. This is actually Aristophanes' second play titled Wealth, but the first one was lost due to times. But the thing that's most noticeable about this play is the fact that it may have inaugurated the movement into the new comedy era. This is the time in history where comedians would offer a mildly sarcastic view of contemporary Athenian society. This new type of comedy focused on fictional events and characters rather than those that have actually happened in real life. While I couldn't find much about the play itself, it likely had elements that were fictional and very unexpected to many viewers, which is what made this type of comedy stick around. Well, Aristophanes started out his comedy career with the classic old comedy view of things. Each new piece that he made held its own innovative comedic style, which would ultimately lead everyone out of this old comedy style of things, which happened from around the 5th century BCE into the new comedy era, which happened shortly after Aristophanes died. While he didn't have many students, Aristophanes did pass a couple of his unfinished plays to his children, Eocleson and Kokolos, but he didn't need many students to make a lasting impact on the world as we know it. If it weren't for Aristophanes and his bravery during such a wonderful time of free speech and slightly less oppressive government practices, the way we imagined these outlandish stories to have a good laugh would likely not exist. So thank you, Aristophanes, for allowing us to grow as a society and move into a better era of comedy.